What internet marketing expert should you spend your valuable time listening to? Listen to someone who has over 20 years of web marketing experience and hundreds of website marketing success stories. That man is Aaron Sparks from Site Strategics. And this is Edge of the Web Radio.
All right, this past October, Google announced accelerated mobile pages, a very accessible framework for creating fast-loading mobile content on the web, or on the line.
On the line.
The open source initiative is designed to enable publishers to easily improve and consequently the user experience for their mobile readership without sacrificing any ad revenue that they may rely upon. So we wanted to introduce to you a presenter at the 2016 Search Marketing Expo. This is Paul Shapiro from Catalyst Marketing. Thanks for coming on the show, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I'll tell you what, we mentioned this. You're more than welcome. I'll tell you what, I mentioned this before we started. Your presentation was by far one of the most technically executable shows. I mean, presentations. A lot of times you get a lot of
Fluff,
for lack of a better word, and hyperbole and conceptual stuff. This stuff literally had the code on the slides.
Yeah.
You don't see that often.
No, and I like to have people be able to actually walk away and do something with what I present. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed that.
Excellent. Well, we certainly did, and we wanted to reach back out and bring some of your expertise and your insight into this particular topic on the show here. So thank you for joining us. So we introduced the show with a key topic that surfaced as a major focus in Google, and that is AMP, the accelerated. Well, before anything else, actually, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Sure. I'm an SEO director for Catalyst, which is a part of Group N. We're an international agency. Mm-hmm. I've been working in SEO for a number of years. I have more of a web development background, and I sort of fell into SEO, so I tend to focus on more of the technical aspects of SEO. And then we get AMP.
Yep.
That is true. That just kind of fell into your lap, didn't it?
Well, the primer was mobile-geddon, so to speak. Yeah. Everybody run to mobile, quickly.
Yeah.
How many clients did you have that had to scramble? I'm assuming with Catalyst that you guys were already well ahead of the curve there on getting everybody mobile. But did you hear the silent scream of, or not so silent scream of companies needing to have that done to them before April last year?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even on our end, we had like a few emails flying back and forth. I hear this is happening,
yep.
And are we okay? Are we okay? But thankfully, we were well off.
So Google announced they wanted everybody to have a responsive design. In tandem, they were saying, don't have two versions of your site. Don't have a mobile version only and a desktop version only. And that's been the evolution of the user experience. Google wants you to adjust to the users that are coming into your site with different platforms. So then, in October, they started to introduce the AMP project. Can you tell us what that project was all about?
So they wanted to create a framework where you could make really fast-loading mobile pages, and they specifically focused on article-type content in this case. There are really three components to AMP. They built a subset of HTML5 called AMP HTML.
Yep.
Then there's a JavaScript component, which actually provides directives on how the page should load. And then there's this cache/CDN component, which integrates well into the search results. And
who's that? And that CDN, where is that being hosted?
That's with Google, I believe.
Right. Yep. And it enhances that performance. So literally, you've got almost three different versions of your content. You've got the mobile experience content. Yeah. You've got your AMP content with the JavaScript firing to actually issue directives, and then you also have the content. The delivery network that is the cached Google content, which is the third version of your site, right?
Yes.
So they're kind of backtracking on the whole singularity. Just a little bit. So that's the structure. So now clue us in on what this means to websites.
Sure. So right now you can implement AMP two different ways. One, you can replace all your code and build your code, your website completely in AMP, or you can have this sort of the second version, which is linked to within the header of the page.
Yep.
And then when you go to Google, they're crawling these AMP versions, and they can choose to display it in the search results. Right now, it's only appearing in the news section. It'll appear in the news section, either in or not in a special carousel. It appears right now in a carousel, but you can also see some results outside of that carousel, and it's labeled with AMP. And if you actually go through and click on it, it'll pull up the page right built into the search results on your phone. You don't ever leave Google. It's a really fluid and fast experience.
Yep. Yep. So it's inside the news, and they have been testing this project for a while, and they're starting to make it reveal it more and more. Do you anticipate that coming into the full search results on the mobile experience?
Well, Google has said that they are working on that. It's sort of a quandary, though. Prioritizes content over regular content.
Right.
So there's some issues I assume that they're debating inside of Google. And I guess that's preventing them from rolling it out full force.
I mean, they're kind of making decisions on priority as we speak, and that's what's really interesting is that conventionally, whenever you have a markup language like HTML5 or HTML4, all the different versions, right? You have the World Wide Web Consortium officially sanctioning a particular schema, a particular convention, right? Well, that's not the case in this respect. You're actually having an open source project that Google's championing because they want speed, and they're prioritizing it as something that they're not insisting yet. But as we also know from what we're hearing about SSL and encryption on sites, they are certainly going to give some points of value to any site that actually is starting to organize its AMP content, right?
I wouldn't go that far
Nope.
to say is that they're going to actually show preference. Right now, there is this carousel, as I mentioned, and you could make some argument that by just in having a carousel that is showing preference, but in the core ranking of it, there is no preference right now. My guess is if they were to implement it into the regular search results, what they would do is say, well, we were going to rank this page anyway. Is there an AMP version? And if there is, let's choose to show that version.
Okay. I can certainly appreciate that perspective. We do see on a regular basis that what they start trying out in the Google space and saying, hey, this is something that we would suggest, ultimately does come into a ranking factor down the road, right?
Very well may.
not to put you on the spot there. It's just, yeah. So, I mean, these are some key takeaways from our listeners to see, okay, well, is this important for me to actually start to execute on? So, now it's not a ranking factor yet, and we certainly want to make sure that everybody understands that. You gave a lot of examples during your presentation regarding why the move to mobile, why the move to AMP, because one of the presentation slides you actually had the Food Network, I believe, that had, what was that, 75 different JavaScript trackers that was just bloating the page. And just increasing the weight or the load time of that page, and Google's just trying to deliver a faster, more topical reference, but I mean delivering it to a mobile experience because I mean the mobile users need that type of that consumable. That I mean they're not getting hit with that much of a load time. What does that do in the space of the app project? Is also not allowing that many trackers in that page. You're not just making a mobile page with the same trackers. I mean, they're not allowing all those different pieces of JavaScript in there, are they?
Well, right. So AMP right now disables third-party JavaScript. So the only JavaScript you can really have in there is the AMP specified JavaScript. So that complicates standard tracking. They do, however, have a series of tags that consolidate into a sort of a single tag and allow for most of that tracking to take place on an AMP page.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you know what? If I could take a break real quick, I would like to come back around and talk about some of the execution of AMP and how you can get it on your website and how you can benefit from this pretty focused project that Google has. Can we carry over the break into the next segment?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to be continuing our conversation with Paul Shapiro, and we're going to be talking about applying AMP and the challenges of execution coming up right after this. Okay, so welcome back to The Edge. We're continuing our talk with Paul Shapiro, a recent presenter at Search Marketing Expo in San Jose. We caught his presentation and decided to bring him home to our listeners. Thanks for staying on with us, Paul.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, I got a question for you. I didn't ask you. What were your takeaways? What were your thoughts about the SMX conference this year?
You know, it's pretty interesting. So I'm from New York originally, and there's an SMX conference in New York called SMX East. And I had been to that one before. I'd never been to SMX West, but wow, I thought SMX West was a far superior conference.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good.
We picked the right one.
I didn't want to go to SMX East anyway.
Yes, you did. Don't lie.
I do still, yeah. Make it happen.
Are you going to be contributing in SMX East this year?
No plans as of now, but maybe.
Huh? Well,
After he's on this show.
exactly. See? Well, we're going to stay on our topic here. We're actually going to we're focusing on AMP, and that's Accelerated Mobile Pages. It's an open source project from Google. And Paul, we were talking about what it's used for, and it's used for speedy delivery of content. And it's right now used with news and magazine websites. And it's being seen in the news channel. So if you're searching something and you go to the tab of news for Google, you're going to see some AMP articles on a carousel. So they offered up this type of new formatting. It's a subset of current HTML, and it's speedy delivery, and it kind of it blocks all of the ad tracking, and it just gets to a particular format that is very easy to read on mobile, right?
Yes.
All right. So tell us a little bit about where you think this entire AMP project is going from what you see right now into give me some future projections on what you think they're going to be using this for. Sure.
So Google is championing the project right now, but there are a number of other tech companies that have a vested interest in it. Twitter, I believe, as of yesterday, rolled out support within their Twitter Moments feature.
Yeah.
So if you go into Twitter Moments and find an article within there, it's going to try to load it through AMP. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. And in some ways, these other tech companies, I think the adoption of AMP as a platform will say a lot about the future of it. This can't just be a Google project or it's going to die.
Yeah.
Like so many other Google projects have died in the past.
No.
Google Plus. I'm sorry. Anyway, too soon? It's too soon. So, from the execution of AMP, I appreciate that. I really agree with you that if it's adopted, if this thing bears fruit, actually, side note, one of the things that we were concerned, and Tom and I were talking when we were out there, about the user experience. Literally, they're stripping out so much formatting that from a conversion focus, I mean, you can certainly customize a mobile experience to be highly conversion focused from the real estate of a mobile screen. We're losing a lot of that control with the AMP page. Would you agree or not?
Yes and no. Again, it's focusing a lot on that news and blog type content, so there's a little bit less you're going to end up playing with anyway.
Yep.
I mean, you're not going to have like a shopping cart on a blog post.
Right.
So right. And then there are other things you can do in terms of conversion. You can actually implement forms, although they don't explicitly say it. There's a component that uses iframes, so if it's you have a conversion form on another page, you can actually get that integrated into your AMP page. It just plays a little bit. It takes a little bit of tweaking.
Well, that's certainly good information to have.
Yeah. I mean, that was my main thing with AMP when I was first reading about it, and then seeing your presentation there, Paul, was just I mean, I get that it's just for news websites, but I mean, I think eventually, like your local plumber and your local service company is going to want to take over that. You take advantage of that AMP speed for their users, and then you pull them up on your mobile device, and like that click to call function or a simple quick form or something like that it loses. It just goes away in AMP, and I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me for that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it doesn't make sense for that type of client.
Yeah.
Right now, at least. There's talks about expanding the platform in the future to work with some other types of content types, but as is, I don't think Joe Schmo the plumber really is the right fit for AMP.
Right. So that's the thing, is that we'll the show's focused on what tips and techniques can many different companies utilize to improve their value to Google and thusly the consumer, right? This may not be the vehicle for Joe the plumber. I would say that, to your point about the shopping cart, I don't know. I could possibly foresee a product-based AMP delivery that cleans out everything, just the product plus the add to cart functionality for speed of purchasing. That, especially if Google's in the space for transactions, that could very well be a rollout down the road. But tell us a little bit about the execution quickly of getting AMP into play on a website.
Like I mentioned previously, you can either have your entire page built in AMP, or you can have two versions of your page: one, the regular mobile experience, and then a separate AMP page that's linked to in the header.
Right.
So if you're having this, most people are going to use the latter, where they have a separate page for the AMP version. There simply needs to be a link in the header. It's link, I think, rel equals AMP HTML, and then href, the AMP version of the page.
Very similar to the canonical, right?
Very similar to the canonical.
Cool.
If you're on a major blogging platform like WordPress or Drupal or Joomla, there are plugins available. I've worked with the WordPress one extensively. It's very easy to implement. You simply install a plugin, and it's basically done for you.
Got it. Now, there have been a couple hiccups that we've been privy to inside the AMP or the WordPress rollout, and we just shared an article at the beginning of the show regarding some Search Console error reporting that Google's providing, so you can actually tie off some of these issues. Have you come across many of those implementation issues?
Oh, so much.
Oh no! There it is.
So the WordPress plugin is still being actively developed, and they're pushing updates frequently. But right now it's a little bit buggy. There are a couple other plugins that act on top of the official WordPress plugin.
Yep.
One is called PageFrog, and they've done a great job adding some enhancements and sort of fixing some of those issues. There's another one, if you guys are using the Yoast SEO plugin.
Yep.
Yoast published another plugin that works on top of the AMP plugin, and it fixes actually a lot of the validation errors. It also allows you to tweak some things that are kind of nice. You can use either and or both of those, and it should help quite a bit. If you're not into using 3 different plugins, then you can also make some code tweaks that are not too difficult. I outlined them on an article in Search Engine Land, and I think in my SMX presentation as well.
Yep.
Excellent. So we're actually going to put your SMX presentation links in in our Edge podcast blog post, as well as links to your own blog and Catalyst. Do you want to say anything about what you see for the future of AMP quickly, and what else in this space? Because I know you're working very, very deeply in the AMP project.
Yeah, I think we're going to start to see other content types supported once they've fully baked out the current implementation. I think we're going to see it in other parts of the search results, maybe even possibly, hopefully, within AdWords or other ad platforms.
Oh, yeah.
I think They haven't said that, but I'm hoping,
Yeah.
and I think
That
it
makes
would make a
sense.
lot of sense for them.
Yep.
I think other technology companies, Twitter just rolled out a basic implementation of it. I'd expect them to do more with that. Pinterest, we're waiting on Pinterest. Pinterest is now validating AMP through their rich pin validator. I think we're waiting for rollout of that. So more technology companies supporting AMP, more support further in Google, and more content types.
Yep, there it is. And all is about the embracing of that technology and making sure that it's useful for the customer or the consumer of that information. So that's a very good inside look of what Google's paying attention to. You want to tell us how we can follow you?
Sure. I'm very active on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Fighto, that's FIGHTO, or you can follow me on my blog at searchwilderness.com.
Very good blog, by the way.
Thank you.
And you want to put your plug in for the company that you're working for?
Yeah. I'm at Catalyst. We are a part of Group M, and we do enterprise search. That's SEO and SEM and social, too.
Very good. All right. So, the point is, will you amp your website? It's kind of too early to say, but if you're a news organization, if you have a lot of content coming out of your site, it may very well be an important thing for you to look at right now as well as in the near future. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming on board, and be sure to check him out at the links provided, and you know what? Check out Catalyst because they do good work up there. Thank you so much for being part of the show today.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll be talking to you soon.